Hi, my name is Will Schwartz. Today, joining us on the podcast, we have Lovey Sidhu, Director of Workforce Development from SkillPlan. Welcome to the Hall. All right, Lovey Sidhu, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's sunny outside, nice in the studio. It's really nice to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
Excited to chat with you.
Yes. Chat all things SkillPlan and all the good work that you're doing over there. So I was putting a couple notes together ahead of time and I realized UA Piping Industry College and SkillPlan have been working together for at least 10 years.
Probably much longer.
Probably. Yeah. I only know the 10-year mark because I'm right around my 10-year anniversary working at the college now. And one of the first things I was working on was some of the development of some of the literature.
You were a subject matter expert. That
I
means
was.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, 10 years plus working with us, and obviously SkillPlan has been along much more.
Yeah. Well, SkillPlan's been around for over 30 years.
Wow.
Which is, pretty amazing. And, we really kicked off in response to the union, sector coming together and, really wanted to investigate, an accident that had happened on the job site. And so that's really kind of the birth of SkillPlan right here in BC.
Wow.
Where everybody wanted to learn about what were some of those pinch points for that third-year apprentice. And we've been really working collectively since then.
Interesting. I never knew that was the origin of SkillPlan and how it came about.
Yeah,
That's
they
very
formed
cool.
into a sector council. And then for many years, it was a combination of research studies, whether we led them or were part of them to really understand some of those gaps, apprentices might have from the point of I'm interested in pursuing an opportunity in the trade to getting their Red Seal success. And then we really transitioned to workforce development solutions. And we rely on partners like yourself and, UA and all the other unions right now, right across North America, essentially, to really learn, what is it that's going on and what can we do to support, the apprentices that are in the system.
That's fantastic.
It's been a while.
I know, right? No kidding. So I was looking a little bit into the scope of SkillPlan. So just a couple questions easy off the top. Addressing the labor shortage, diversifying the workforce, the improvement, retention, completion, and then obviously the skills transfer and reinforcing the knowledge. So all of those within the scope of SkillPlan. So can you give a bit more background on?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. So, for 30 years, that's really our primary focus. And we've been very fortunate to have received some great, funding and great partnerships, with local unions like yourself to really understand, for example, if we're trying to collectively diversify the workforce, right? We want to see more women, more Indigenous peoples, newcomers, learners with learning disabilities or learning complexities are coming into the system. We're trying to determine, collectively, what are some of the pinch points that they might have or barriers that might exist for them to successfully enter into a trade. So then we're creating resources and tools to help benchmark readiness. We look at, together with the system on, okay, once they enter into the apprenticeship, what are some of those pinch points or gaps that they might have for them to achieve their Red Seal or, transition to the next level of their apprenticeship, and what can we do about that as well? So we're always working and thinking and strategizing collectively, with our partners on ways to, better serve not only the apprentice, but the organizations that are supporting those apprentices as well. So
very cool. That you're saying all that, and I'm imagining the website that you guys have set up and the build your skills profile, the way that apprentices or potential apprentices are able to go through. So can you give a little bit of a background on how that was developed and really the target that you have for that build your skills section?
You got it. Very similar to the work that we do to support, apprentices here. Really the first piece of the puzzle was how do we break away from traditional ways in which people try to enter the trades, right? And I always tell the same joke, that if I wanted to, become an electrician, I wanted to go into the piping trades, there's these kind of prerequisite requirements. I have to get my grade 12 math as an example. And so, I show up and, I might be 26, 27-year-old, I have a life. I don't want to go back and get that particular credential. And then, if you do an analysis, you actually realize that you don't need 100% of Math 12 in order to be successful in the trades. You definitely some components of it.
Yeah.
And then what happens, so I go take my grade 12 math, I get my 51% to make sure I get it on my credit. I show up to technical training. I probably miss the most important 49%, so that I'm shit out of luck anyways.
Yeah.
So then I'm struggling. And so really it's how do we create resources resources and tools to benchmark readiness more accurately. And so for many, many years, we were working with like our Indigenous training providers and partners like yourself and other local unions on creating assessments to, really determine, do you have the smarts to enter into the trades? And then once, we know, okay, yeah, there's particular gaps, say, in your core math skills. What do we do about it? How do we create content so that, not only are training providers equipped with, these resources, but in addition, I can go home as an apprentice or a pre-apprentice, and learn on my own. And so using all those models and frameworks and research and so on and so for all, 30 whatever years, then it turned into, okay, how do we be more responsive, to the needs of apprentices? And, COVID was an interesting dynamic, as much as it really hit the industry in a, kind of a wild way, it also did wonders for online learning.
Yes.
So now apprentices, pre-apprentices, training organizations, they see the difference between good online training. I think it really opened the doors for especially trades training who might have had a little bit more apprehension about getting involved in online learning because it's such a, technical and practical, space to be in. So, working so closely with, trade professionals to understand, hey, what would it take, if I was an apprentice going into a learning environment, what does it need to look like? What does it need to feel like? What experiences do they need to have? And so, all that research really helped to influence taking content that we had been using and implementing and turning it into this, really dynamic, engaging, self-directed online learning hub where we've incorporated like video content, there's animations. But I think the key was, and somebody said this really beautifully, like when you guys create this content, under no circumstances should you be demonstrating a pizza to show fractions. Like find something else, right? And that was the key, right? Is like, if we create content that's trade contextualized, not only, will an apprentice be excited about going into the system, but we started to do, like our analysis on the use and stuff. The more exciting stuff was, yes, their skills were improving, but you started to see them respond with like motivation. Now I understand what it actually takes, to go into. Now I know why I need to know fractions, and that was really kind of the main reason why Build Your Skills was created is we want to make sure that people understand, that not only do you need to know your math, but this is how you're going to utilize that, specific to a trade.
Yes.
And that's really where kind of the Build Your Skills Learning Hub came from.
It's funny. I remember when I came out of high school, and I think I mentioned this in every podcast we do, my own circumstances. But when you get into the trades, the specific math and the needs that you have and what you carry over from high school, I mean, it isn't straight apples to apples or apples to oranges or anything like that. Like it's very different, but it is a lot of those key points that you pick up while you're going through. And, with the Build Your Skills, what would you call it?
We call it the Learning Hub.
We
call it the Learning Hub now.
I love that. A lot of what we're talking about is for that pre-apprentice side, someone that's looking to get into it. But I know on the Build Your Skills site, there's also a lot that's offered on there for existing apprentices, ways for them to brush up in certain areas.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of pinpointed a really great thing about that transition from like, the education system in high school and moving into, trades training. The unfortunately, the stigma still exists. I think it's definitely getting better. We're starting to see, more, conversations about, trades, opportunities not being, plan B, but actually, being a plan A, that's one thing. But we still see, that dynamic where, apprentices are coming into the system, and sure, they know their math, they know how to do their division, they understand trigonometry, but as soon as you put them in a trades context, right, you give them a blueprint, you give them a design sheet, you give them a spec, you ask them to do a layout, they have no idea how to take, let's say trigonometry and put it into, whatever application it might be, total fall, percent, and ratios, and so on and so forth. So that's still a gap that exists. And what we started to notice is that there's all these resources and tools, that somebody needs as they're entering into the trade. But the other piece of the puzzle is that when I'm in the trade, and I might be year two, I would say some of those folks kind of sneak through the system, right? And it's not until, third year, fourth year, where all of a sudden there's a little bit more complexity to the things that they're learning. And now you can't get away with not knowing your foundational skills as well. So math is relevant right across all 4 years, 3 years, 2, or whatever the trade it may be. So we have lots of apprentices come in to build your skills to do exactly what you said, refreshing. And we call it review preview. Oh, I know I'm going to be going back to technical training. I better brush up a bit. Or maybe they're learning a new concept, right? A technical training concept. And all of a sudden, you know, they recognize that in order for me to do this particular application, I actually need to go back and remember this particular math. So linking those two pieces together. Then, in addition to all those kind of, you know, resources and the technical training kind of mini lessons, there's Red Seal prep courses in there. There's, you know, health and well-being. You know, there's introduction to mentorship. There's lots of other resources to kind of round out that when you're out there on the job site, you know, working more effectively with diverse populations. So lots of other course content, you know, to help support and supplement, you know, as they're going through their apprenticeship.
So good. It's so good. I was on there earlier. I was clicking around a little bit. I mean, even the section that you have on there so that they can click around and they can see, you know, what trade they might be interested in.
Yeah.
So even before they're an apprentice or they're, you know, trying to decide if they have the skills for it, even just trying to decide what trade they want to get into, you've got a ton of stuff on there as well.
You got it. Yeah. We started to notice more and more as folks would start coming into the Learning Hub. Originally, it was really, you know, intended to be learning tools, right? Is that, you know, we want to create kind of a system, you know, where pre-apprentices and apprentices come in, but exactly how you highlighted it. You might come in knowing I know what I want to do when I grew up relative to trades, and others will come in knowing I want to get involved into the trades, but I don't understand what's involved. You know, what's expected of me? What does the role look like? So, I mean, we did some incredible video shoots with you guys, you know, really. Yeah. And the intent of those video shoots was a couple of things, right? One is to really showcase, and I always say I'm a closeted academic, you know, so I I was in the system, right, with this like thought process of, okay, I think I know what a plumber does. Okay, I know, you know, that there's a crane operator, but I don't really understand it. And so the campaign was really about how do we dispel some of those myths, right? Some of those perceptions about, you know, what are the piping trades? You know, does everybody know that there's multiple, you know, sub trades within the piping? No, they don't, right? You don't think about the sprinklers that go in. You only think about plumbing, you think about a plumber. You don't think about, you know, pipeline work. You don't think about, you know, all these huge projects. You know, we had this really fascinating call with the the Toronto Zoo, who also takes apprentices. And, you know, people don't know, you know, how much the trade has to offer, the diversity behind the trades. And so that was the other part of the puzzle is like, how do we not only pull people in, but get them really excited, you know, about what the variety in the trades are and the different types of opportunities. And that's really where that, you know, Explorer Hub came from within the Build Your Skills Learning Hub, was so that people could flip around and take a look and really start pinpointing, you know, areas of interest, better understanding of things that, you know, they might be excited about, or, you know, even just a soft introduction of if you're going to go into, you know, a trade, you know, crane operator, here are some of the math knowledge you need to know versus going into, you know, the piping trades. Here are some of the reading and document skills that you need. So that's what the Explorer Hub is. So we kind of go from this process of like, first let's inspire them and get them all excited with a real easy touch on the math. And then you can move into the pre-apprentice hub where you're starting to build those skills. And then you go into the apprentice hub where you're having a chance to really work on skills that are specific to the trade that you're already involved in.
That's so good. So can you show us?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to take a break here. We're going to get you set up and you're going to go through and drive us through a little bit here. So let's cut over to that.
You got it. All right. So here's a preview of the Build Your Skills Learning Hub. You know, as we had talked about, there's kind of 3 unique profiles of, you know, future and prospective apprentices that, you know, come into the system. So, you know, we've got folks who are still in that discovery, exploration stage. Then we've got, you know, folks who know they want to, you know, start an opportunity in the trades, but maybe they haven't really determined what they want to be when they grow up, but it's been a while since they've looked at math, for example. And then you have your apprentice, you know, who's looking for resources to help support them as they, you know, progress through the apprenticeship. So the Explorer resources are really great. You know, they're, you know, a soft introduction to, you know, trade discovery, understanding, you know, what the apprenticeship system is all about, getting connected to, you know, local unions, you know, to get started on that apprenticeship. And really, the other part is like, going here, you can select a trade, decide, you're interested in pursuing, or want to learn a little bit more about a particular trade. And once you come into that particular kind of trade page, there's content, there's video content in here. There is a soft introduction to, the roles and responsibilities of that particular trade. And then what, the Learning Hub does is it introduces like, hey, if this is, the trade you want to go into, what are some of those math topics? So it's really intended to be more exploration, more inspirational. And then when you move into the Pre-Apprentice Hub, this is where you're going to get, content to start preparing to enter into the trades. And it is, kind of across trades as well. So, what is the math that you need? And I'm going to go into the math course. But one of the first places where is some pre-apprentices, and actually even apprentices can start, is taking the assessment. So the assessment, what it does is it benchmarks or lets like, do I have my, math smarts, reading and document new skills, science principles. And as soon as you complete, that particular, practice test, it'll actually let that which course, you should focus your attention on. But here's an example of what one of the math courses look like. And the other kind of key thing with all of the content in the Build Your Skills Learning Hub is everything is open, which means that you don't have to complete, your first unit in order to get access to the next unit. It's intended to, offer you an opportunity to go through tools that are most relevant and most applicable for your needs. So all of the lessons, have a very similar format, like what am I going to learn? There's always these great pre-assessment activities just to gauge understanding. You can write a short little quiz, related to that particular lesson as well. And you'll start to see that everything is trade contextualized. And that was really, a main driver when it came to working with our partners is, ensuring that, there's examples that are fully trade contextualized. So you can see there's fun, animations that have been built in here to kind of highlight certain concepts. So it goes through a series of what am I going to learn? You can do a quick little quiz, then it goes through guided instruction, step-by-step instructions, and then a series of practice activities. There's also videos that have been built in. Those videos are instructors actually teaching those concepts as well. So, you can access that. And then I'm going to pop over to the Apprentice Hub. And so what the Apprentice Hub does essentially is this is where all of the content is contextualized for that specific trade. So we've got apprentices who will come in, they'll find that particular, that trade that they're already in, or maybe they already know I'm going to be starting, in this particular trade in September or whatever it might be, and they want to already start preparing. Same idea. So this is where all this content is actually contextualized for that trade. There's science. And then there's these little great mini lessons. And so these mini lessons, we're going to keep learning from our apprentices on areas that, they want to learn more about, areas that, they might struggle with or they need a little bit more practice on. And that's really who the driver is when we create these various different mini lessons. And so the mini lessons, essentially, they're, again, these great animations to highlight a concept. There's this problem set, that somebody can work towards. There's these teaching videos that are really kind of showing you the process of, when you're looking at a particular problem, how do you go ahead and, look for keywords, organizing the information. So we're kind of teaching a question strategy to use. And then there's a series of practice activities. And the neat thing is that, again, while you're going through some of these, concepts, in technical training, it ties back to some of those core skills as well. So, you might be learning about total fall, but in order to be, capable of doing, this particular technical training concept, you also need to have a good understanding of like math applications or, linear conversions, et cetera. So then you can, kind of jump back to some of those core skills as well. The other key piece, of course, is that, there's other resources that are available, to help support you when you're in your apprenticeship. And so managing test anxiety, sometimes, folks are very, very savvy when it comes to the trade, but, just the idea of writing a test might give you a little bit of nerves. So there's a course here. Red Seal Prep really helps to, prepare folks entering into the trade. Again, it's really intended to give you a good overview of what the exam expectations are, how to prepare for it. practice activities, understanding the components of your Red Seal exam. So that way, when you're participating, or maybe you're attending some, IP refreshers or IP or Red Seal prep, technical training, you can focus really on some of those technical training concepts. Managing Your Money is a great course, for anybody who's starting in the trades and wants to have a better understanding of how to save, how to invest, how to spend wisely. What are the tax benefits, for apprentices? Lots of content in here. Indigenous awareness training, respectful and inclusive workplace training, working, with diverse populations, and then health and well-being. So, the key is as we create content, we keep adding. So, we always encourage training organizations and apprentices who are in the system to keep come back often. Lots of resources in here to help you, as you go through your apprenticeship journey.
Wow, that was really cool, Lovey. Thanks for showing us that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah. I get excited every time I go into it as well.
I know.
We add content, or our team adds content, I would say probably every week. So sometimes even when I go in there, it's the first time we saw the little welding avatar. That was only released like 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no way.
So, that's the other piece. The content that gets created in the hub is directly in response to, actually, it was your team who had said, hey, you know what, can you break this out and bring, a welding hub, into the platform? We're like, absolutely. So it's exciting. It's fun.
And who can get access to that?
So the tools and resources are accessible in a variety of ways. So when we work in partnership with the training organizations, and say, for example, the teacher wants to have, the ability to kind of monitor how their, apprentices are doing within the system, then we say that's direct enrollment. And so they should contact, SkillPlan directly. info@skillplan.ca works, or they can contact me as well.
We'll put that in the notes down
perfect,
there.
Yeah. Or even go to our website. But the idea really is that, we want to make sure that, when we're integrating the tools within a particular system, we're working with the organization to understand, what are the needs that they have? How are they serving their particular apprentices or pre-apprentices? What are some of the, strains and pinch points that they might have? Because we can package up the tools in a particular way. That's kind of the other beauty of it. We call them widgets, right? There's hundreds and thousands of widgets. It's just a matter of deciding, what widgets are going to best serve that particular program. So we do have the ability to just enroll folks directly. We just need first name, last name, and email address. That's how simple it is.
Easy.
And then, if a teacher wants to be involved, then we can set up little cohorts as well.
So good. So good. Why can't everything be as easy as that?
It's true. Well, it took a few years to get there.
That's okay.
Years.
That's okay, right? So you mentioned there some of the partnerships, and at the beginning of all of this, I was talking about the partnership that we've had at UA Piping Industry College and SkillPlan over the years. Can you dive into some of the partnerships that you've had? And I know, talking to Kyle the other day, it's not even, Vancouver, BC, Canada, North America, it's growing. So can you speak to some of the partnerships that you guys have?
SkillPlan, born and raised in beautiful British Columbia,
Yes.
right? So definitely this is our home, and we work very closely with each of the, the Provincial Building Trade Council here, as well as all of the local unions. And then we work with our affiliated training providers. So, like yourself, as an example, or anybody else, the institutions that they might, Camosun College, for example, right? So 324 works with them. And so as a result of the partnerships with the local unions, then you kind of trickle into, okay, well, this is where it was great learning for me, right? It's the connection with the local union to the provincial council, to, CBTU, to the international locals, to, NAPTU and the North American Building Trades. We're all together in one system. And the beauty has been is that, all of the kind of growth for, the Build Your Skills Learning Hub has come from referrals, right? It's been, training providers who, are sitting, in little presentations that we might do, or they might hear from instructor A, hey, you should check out this tool. These would be great for your folks. And that's really allowed us to kind of, integrate the tools in a variety of systems. So we are working with, from provincial building trade councils to the local unions, their college and training providers. We're also working with community organizations. So that's been another really neat growth, is that, we have so many of these smaller, groups that are providing services to women from, complex home environments or shelters, that are transitioning into the trades. We're working with, multi-barriered youth, who are coming into the trades. So that's been another really great little niche, is providing community organizations with tools, because often they're, kind of resource poor almost, like they don't have, trade contextualized content. The other growth, what we've seen is within the high school system, which is exciting. It's very, very exciting. And those are often like, pathway programs, like, in partnership with you guys, right? Is that you've got these beautiful dual credit programs, and often same thing, right? High school teachers are great at math, have absolutely no idea how this math applies to the piping trades, how this math applies to carpentry. And so that's been another, really neat growth market, essentially, is like working with the high schools and the partnerships. That I think the key is always partners. Like, one of the things that we've recognized and we've integrated in the Learning Hub is also, the drive of making, and ensuring people understand the benefits of being in trade unions. And so the Build Your Skills Learning Hub, like you'll see in the Explorer Hub, we talk about the benefits of the unions, how the union's going to support me in my apprenticeship, all of the wraparound supports, like you had mentioned earlier, we were talking about like mental health and well-being, what are those kind of supports that are provided? So that's kind of the other piece within the hub as well. But yeah, so we've kind of really
a lot.
We've really ballooned. Yeah.
Yes, no kidding.
Yeah, it's been pretty great.
No kidding. And when you talk about, the growth over the years, I know even in the last 5 years, the work that we've always done together in partnership, even the things that we're working on collectively, can you give our viewers at home an idea of what we're working on together, some of the services that SkillPlan provides for UA Piping Industry College as well as our members?
You got it. There's a great range. If we think about, first and foremost, we always say our apprentice is at the center of everything that we do. I think, that's one kind of incredible thing, for us collectively, is that we start there, right? So what can we do to ensure that that person is excited to enter the trades, that person is supported? And so the Build Your Skills Learning Hub is one key piece. We do have trade benchmark assessments. So for organizations, we work with a lot of the locals who, are doing intakes, right? So you want to make sure, do we have candidates who are prepared? They have a really great grasp on the concepts that they need to have to be successful. Build Your Skills has done a great thing where, now you can do an intake assessment, as part of your entrance. But at the same time, those are captive folks. I think we were working with one of the locals in central Canada, and they had an intake process where, folks came in once a year. They stood outside in a lineup, over 200 candidates.
Wow.
The last time I stood in line was at Ticketmaster back in the day.
What concert was that?
Back in the day, not to be disclosed. And I was like, well, what do you do with, like, if you take in 60 a year, what do you do with the rest? And they're like, well, hopefully they'll come back next year. But now we've got kind of a mechanism to be able to say, hey, you weren't successful this year, but here are some tools for you to continue to build, right? Continue to build your skills and come back to us. Because if someone's standing outside, that's a pretty amazing thing.
They want it.
They want it.
And I understand. You can't take everyone, but being able to at least point them in a direction with some resources or some help so they're able to better themselves. And then the next time the opportunity comes up, they're able to actually go after it.
You got it. Yeah. And so we tend to stay, what we say, kind of behind the scenes on that as well, is that we do want the representing organization, so if you're, taking an intake assessment, we want you to represent that it's essentially, your intake assessment is part of your intake process, and these tools and resources are here to support your future apprentices or prospective apprentices. So, intake assessments is, one great tool that a lot of organizations are using. The Build Your Skills Learning Hub, having instructors, work directly with us on creating little cohorts. And then mentorship. Mentorships, I would say mentorship is all the rage and it's about time.
Well, is this the right time to transition over to that?
Sure, yeah.
I don't want to shortchange though. Hang on. Okay, let's put that on pause for a second, because we've still got, there's all the other, the tutoring services you guys do. Let's finish that conversation up before we get into the mentorship, because I know that's exciting.
I'm excited about mentorship.
I know.
And so tutoring services, as an example with you guys, we do this with the operating engineers as well, sheet metal. There's lots of locals that we actually will come on site and do tutoring. We, kind of like after school service. Or sometimes, we'll have the locals will say, hey, we have a whole group of folks that need to prepare for an assessment. The whole, group needs a little bit more support on, some of those math concepts or the
Right.
essential skills or now skills for success. So, and really the intent is that we kind of supplement, so, the training providers can focus on the technical training,
Yes.
and we help with, the kind of the core skills so that when they're looking at technical training concepts, they're going to be that much more successful. So there's definitely tutoring.
Yes.
We do tons of program development now as well. So, we've been working in partnership to create the, job steward courses. There's, union orientation courses. There's like the boot camp,
Yeah.
to kind of a get started, with the union. So lots of other, courses to help support, intake processes, specialty training, leadership training. So essentially, again, it kind of ties into, the partnerships. You tell us, you're the driver, right? What are your needs? What are the apprentices need? And then we essentially work together to create content and curriculum. So I guess the only other piece we could talk about is like, a couple of our projects under learning disabilities. And so we kind of like to say learning disabilities / learning complexities.
Complexities.
Yeah,
That's
learning complexities.
The new buzzword for it, right?
Well, I think, what it is, it's like the learning disabilities world is essentially, it's like a medical model, right? It's like what we're saying is, hey, Lovey, you have a learning disability, go get a, diagnostic, tell us you have dyslexia, and then we'll be able to help you. And so one of the projects that we're working on is actually to kind of flip it upside down, is how can we change the system and not change the apprentice? Because apprentices are still pretty reluctant to come forward. And to get, an assessment is very costly. It takes quite some time. And you don't need it. Like, you don't necessarily need, some type of a medical report to say that you need support. So we've been doing, kind of like we say soft touch, assessments to determine, if they had accommodations in the past that were helping them. Providing professional development to technical training providers is coming very soon. Where we'll talk about things like, universal design learning. How can you change your classroom? Or, what do I look for, when I have somebody in my technical training class, right? The technical training instructors aren't looking at poems and essays, right? So they're,
I don't know, maybe.
unless they are, I don't know. Although that would be a really fun activity, right? Like, you should have all your apprentices write a poem about their trades.
Oh my God. Yes.
So we do lots of support with learning disabilities, and that includes like, more kind of, accommodations when we do tutoring, better recognition of like, what can we do, providing more time, say, on assessments and clarification on questions. So that's kind of another piece, is supporting those apprentices as well.
And it's funny because when you talk about kind of flipping it around and working your way backwards from, I guess, what the problem is to the solution. I remember when I used to teach, when you're in front of the class and you're going through all the things, you can pick up pretty quickly the students that are getting and the ones that aren't, and you can just tell by the look in their face pretty quickly who's going to need a little bit more help. And I remember personally, it didn't matter if there was a documented learning disability or dyslexia or whatever the case was, that the person needed help. And when I was the instructor, I would take the time and you go through, and it wasn't trying to dissect what the problem was. It was trying to figure out the solution of how I could actually help that apprentice be able to grasp whatever the challenge was at that time.
Yeah.
And, with the learning assessments and the different strategies that I know they come up with the high schools, it's different in the trades. And when they go and they write their Skilled Trades BC subject level exam, or they have their red seal or something, there's different parameters that they're able to do. But my job as the instructor is to try to get them to grasp the material that's there. And going back to what you're saying, having flexibility and understanding what the problem is and trying to come with that solution, I think is a really fresh way of looking at how things are done. And again, coming back to that difference between high school education and trades training, there's a big difference there. And really, the expectation for what you need coming out is a lot different than what it would have been in a high school situation where you just need everyone to get through that spot.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that we're learning, as, folks come into, or apprentices enter into the job site, we actually have to think about different ways to, engage those apprentices who might have those complexities. Because, often, anybody who's not really aware of like learning disabilities and, so on and so forth, you might struggle with, let's say, reading. Let's just say, you need particular devices to help with like reading or whatever it might be. But usually what that means is that they have a skill set in a different way as well. And you maximize on that. So that's really the other idea is like, how do we really have much more of a strength-based model, right? Like what is it that this person is, able to do and able to do really well, and then they complement each other. And you probably see that in your technical training classrooms, right? It's like, we are all diverse.
Well, not, you saying that, it's funny because when we have students in for technical training, I mean, all of it is really academic. Yeah, there's certain aspects, they're out in the shop and they're doing things like that. But I mean, especially as they progress through their apprenticeship and they get closer to writing their Red Seal, it becomes more and more academic focused. And we need to be realistic. Not everyone's an academic. I chose to get into the trades because I'm not an academic.
Yeah.
Now, they don't necessarily have to be strong in academics. They can be a hell of a good tradesperson out with their hands and be able to look at the prints and be able to put things in the air. Yeah. But they might not be super strong when it actually comes to doing the actual exam.
It. Yeah, you got it.
So trying to figure out a way to bridge that gap so that the people that have the skills on the field, but maybe not necessarily in the classroom, we're still able to get them through to the point where they're successful.
Yeah, you got it. I mean, really, at the end of the day now, it's like we need to do better to support apprentices. And that's one thing, like, I mean, and again, I laugh, like coming in for myself, I've been in kind of this, sector now for about 5 years. And, it's just so incredible to see like your philosophy. Like you're a great example of how, our technical training, within the union system is really diversified, right? It's like, there's like the apprentice is at the center, always the member is at the center. And so what can we do, whether they're on the job site, whether they're, in a classroom environment, what can we do to better support them? So yeah, that's kind of the key philosophy under the, the learning disabilities or learning complexities is like, how do we, really flip the system on its head to be a little bit more strength-based and maximize, on all that potential that this person, who's sitting in the seat, rearing to go.
Well, and the thing is, like, I know with Local 170, we are screaming for people right now. I mean, apprentices, journey person, whatever it is. I mean, we can put literally everybody to work tomorrow. And if there's a disability or a difficulty that someone is experiencing and we just turn our back on them, that's potentially a really good member that could have went out that had a solid career within Local 170 or any of the other building trades affiliates. And that reason why they turned their back or why we turned our back on them could have been such a small detail that could have been acknowledged if there's a little bit of attention paid to it in the process. And with all of the resources that are available now, it makes it that much easier to be able to bring these people in.
You got it. And even with instructors, like sometimes it's not so much that they don't have like, the desire to help somebody. It's just that they don't know how, and maybe it seems a little bit, frightening or daunting, or how am I going to get Lovey through technical training? Like it's so jam-packed, and instructors will be quite surprised to realize that it actually only takes really some, I mean, of course there's very complex needs, that's a different ballgame, but, majority of apprentices who are struggling, they might need a little bit more time on an exam. They might need, a reader, they might need, a space for them to write the assessment, so that, they don't have the distractions. They might need to like listen to music while they're writing an exam. There's subtle things, and we call those accommodations in kind of the learning disability spaces, subtle things that somebody can do. And I think that's the other part is that, when we start kind of rolling out that professional development and instructors start to realize like, wow, it's not a lot. We did this really great, like we call it, let's say a little, pilot study, and implemented, an all-inclusive accommodation opportunity, right? So anything to, weighted blankets to help with anxiety, to, everything, like to, fidget toys for somebody with things, whatever it might be. It was like anything and everything went. And the intent of that was to see is like, how would, implementing as many accommodations, like all inclusive, let's go all in, any technology that's needed, what happens, down the line when it's 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, do we see a drop in, the number of accommodations? And that's literally exactly what happened.
Really?
Most apprentices are not looking to differentiate themselves, right? They don't want to walk in, and visibly, be recognized for a disability. What they're looking for is, accommodations to help support them in the best way. And so the top 2, 3, time. a little bit more time, right? If you get a little bit more time, it gives them a little bit more opportunity to think and process that information, which should be a good thing.
Absolutely.
Or space, some people actually benefit from having space, and then clarification on those were our top three, going from 20, 30 different types of accommodations, and then it's about creating an environment of trust and support, right? It's
right.
like you set the tone, everybody here is supposed to be here. We're here to support you.
Yeah.
It was quite remarkable to see A, the drop, and B, just the level of excitement and self-advocacy
right.
As a transition into technical training, to be able to say, hey, I know I'm going to do really well, but I'm going to need a little more time.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Time especially. I mean, I know with our apprentices, we usually have the chat with them ahead of time, and if they need accommodation, we help them through that process. And whether it's the Skilled Trades BC subject level exams or the Red Seal, it's not a difficult process to put an application in for an accommodation for more time.
Yeah, they're great.
When you're writing your Red Seal, and it's literally the biggest exam that you're going to write to, that point in your life, getting an extra hour for that exam, I mean, that's huge. And even if they don't need it, just knowing that they're not going to be hemmed in by that timeline on the back end, because that in itself can cause anxiety.
Yeah, you got it. Absolutely. It's so subtle, right? It's just little shifts in our traditional ways of thinking of what education looks like. And that's going to make a significant difference. I mean, and then I always think about the apprentice, right? It's you have this awesome instructor who actually gives a shit about you, and all they did was, provide you a little bit more time and clarified a question. Rest assured that person's going to remember you for the rest of their life.
No kidding, right?
Right? You probably have people who come back to you years later.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's I love it. Walking down the hallways, and usually I apologize because I was a shitty instructor. I wasn't that bad. No. I wasn't that bad. No. Anyway, we should. That's a really good point to transition to mentorship, though.
Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. So you weren't a shitty mentor. I hope that you weren't a shitty
No, I wasn't a shitty instructor, and I'm not a bad mentor, no. But I get two casualties sometimes, you know how it goes. So mentorship matters. So this was something that started over 10 years ago also.
Yeah, I think we're 14, 15 years.
Yeah. I was doing some research, and in 2012 was when it rolled out. Yeah.
Fantastic, yeah. Mentorship is all the rage, and it should be. One of the things, again, for myself is it's very interesting. So if you want to be a technical training instructor, and you have to have your Red Seal, you have to go back and get at least some teacher training or some facilitation experience before you can be in a technical training classroom. And then we say 80% of the learning happens on the job, but my mentor doesn't need any training. So, it's such a great program, because it's different than, let's say, a mentorship philosophy. You definitely need to have an organization or a culture of mentorship, a belief that, knowledge transfer is important, supporting apprentices when they come on the job site, is very important. That's one piece of the puzzle, but Mentorship Matters program is really about training. There's a workshop dedicated specifically to apprentices, and we're really teaching, how do you maximize on that mentoring relationship, right? How do you become more of an active listener? Don't be passive in your mentoring relationship. How do you set goals for yourself? How do you take feedback, and what do you do, say, for example, if you still have a crusty mentor, how do you elicit feedback, right? That so that it benefits you, so you can maximize on your experience. So that's, the first workshop, and a lot of, technical training providers, what they'll do is they'll actually implement that workshop in year one, right before folks are about to go off onto the job site, so that they've got, this, stronger communication ability. So it really covers a lot of those soft skills. And then on the flip side is, kind of the jewel, the workshop for mentors. Is that, what does it take in order for you to, transfer knowledge on the job more effectively? We have seen so many incredible mentors who, are very, very skilled at their craft, but maybe not as skilled at transferring that knowledge, or not as skilled at teaching that. And that's not of any fault to, their want and desire to do it, but they've just never been taught how to teach.
Right.
And so that's essentially what the workshop for mentorship, for the mentors is. It's about how do you teach on the job? Being aware of like, how do you, identify what the learning objective is? Why are we doing this? Why is it important to link the skill? We hear this over and over again is lots of apprentices will say, yeah, my mentor told me to do this. I have no idea why.
No kidding.
No idea why I'm doing it, And so linking the skills, adding some value to, that particular task that they're learning. How do you do an effective demonstration? Is like, how do you, when do you know that you're supposed to like kind of pop in and check on your apprentice? And when do you know that you can kind of step back? Because now the apprentice is, starting to work more independently and safely. So it's been a great program. We were very fortunate to have received some federal funding where we did a return on investment study.
Yes.
Because that was the kind of a hot topic, let's say, for contractors of, hey, if I'm going to invest in this, I'm going to put our workers through, training. What is the return? And, we say it's not rocket science. Of course, if you teach the folks that need to transfer knowledge, how to transfer knowledge properly, effectively, efficiently. So we saw, I think it was like 12% increase in the proper use of PPE. You have some of the stats,
12.1%. Come on, don't shortchange yourself, Lovey. Do you want me to read through? Yeah. So I pulled it up ahead of time. So 12.1% increase in the proper use of PPE, 9.2% reduction in compliance and health and safety procedures, 35% improvement in task efficiency, 42% reduction in downtime, 15.6% reduction in rework. And for every dollar invested, there was a $2 return. So that's pretty good stats.
Pretty significant, yeah. But again, it's like it's not rocket science, right? It's like if you just think about like the highest stat there, that 35%, for task efficiency. So if you're my mentor, Will, and you teach me, how to do something right the first time.
Yeah.
Right? That's all it takes, right? We hear so much on job sites about, rework. Oh, that apprentice has no idea what they're doing. I told them how to do it, and I showed them how to do it, and she just never got it, And so now you got to go in and reteach it. And now you have to go in, maybe you have to deconstruct something and rebuild it. So all of that, really contributes. Like if you know exactly how to transfer that knowledge, of course you're going to see improvements right across the board. So it's just really great to have a research study.
Yeah.
We had 31 contractors across Canada that were part of that study, 1,800 participants. So it was a very, very significant study as well.
Wow.
It was awesome.
Big success.
Yeah.
I'm having flashbacks to when I was first, second year apprentice, and I asked, well, why do we got to do that? Shut the fuck up and do it.
That's exactly. Yeah, you'd be surprised. Those guys still exist.
I know. It works sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I just need to shut the fuck up and do it. But at the same time, I'm also thinking about some of the apprentices that we have now.
Yeah.
I'm technically a millennial, and I know there's some in everything you ask, well, why? It's like my little toddlers, right?
Yeah.
Why, Dad? Why?
Yeah.
And so I can already imagine how useful this would be for some of our older generations or even some of the younger ones that are coming in and they're new journeymen that have their red seal and they've just got their ticket and really they're just starting to learn themselves, but now they've been paired up with a first year apprentice. And now that apprentice is looking at them for the information and they need to understand how to be able to transfer those skills or pass on. And, when we talk about the communication that needs to happen clearly and concisely and the questioning back and forth, there's a respectful way to ask.
Yeah.
But, you need to understand that when the apprentice is asking, sometimes they might be a bit nervous or sometimes they don't know what you're talking about. So being able to provide those journey persons as well as the apprentices the abilities to communicate that properly, that's a huge skill.
Yeah,
that's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say this is one of those contexts where the no news is good news does not apply. As a mentor, if your apprentice is not asking you questions, do not think that they understand.
Yeah. It's not a good sign.
It's not. It might exactly. And we just went through this incredible video shoot. To again engage with mentors just to talk about that. And that was the number one thing is when an apprentice asks questions, seems like such a simple thing, it's it demonstrates that they're interested in the trade, they're excited about the trade, so it's a great program, definitely.
Questions is a good thing. I'm remembering back when I was teaching, and I would go over a concept, and any questions, and if it was crickets, it's like, shit, we got to go over this again.
Yes.
Because if there's questions, it means that it's engaging them, that they're trying to work their way through it, and if there's no questions, usually it's not a good sign.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
So we're gonna put some links to this stuff downstairs. Not downstairs, down below. I'm new to YouTube, so
in the credits, Will?
Down below, right down here, downstairs, we'll call it. We'll put some links to this stuff in there. So the build your skills, obviously, we'll put in. We'll put a link to SkillPlan as well. Really appreciate you having. Really appreciate. Can you tell us Friday afternoon?
You're happy to see me.
I know.
You're excited I was here.
Yes, thank you. You want to just do the out? Thank you for coming. We really appreciate. I can't even do it, man.
It's Friday afternoon.
Let's
wrap it up.
Let's call her there. Thank you, Lovey, for coming.
We appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate
Thank
the
you.
opportunity. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for coming. This is another episode of the Hall Podcast. My name is Will. I'll see you sometime soon. Take care.
Awesome.